It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Be sure to follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. And if you're not watching the show over there already, go check out our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. And also leave a like on the videos. It really helps us out a lot. Also, follow us everywhere you listen to the podcast. If you don't watch over on YouTube, whether you listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast, follow us there. Leave a rating, helps us out a lot. Also, check out the description on either the listening platforms or the YouTube. You get the link to all of our great sponsors down below. Smitty, how we doing?
I'm doing better than anybody that has a George Pickens jersey, I think, probably is doing today.
Probably true.
Yeah.
Do you have one?
No, I actually used it as a giveaway on here when I felt like the writing was on the wall.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Not so like it wasn't like I think it might have been honestly during the 23 season where again like I was personally out on George. I've been pretty open about this. Like try to be as unbiased as possible when talking about these guys, but I've been out on George Pickens going back to not even this past season, but the previous one. Like so, I have not wanted him to be a part of the Steelers' long-term future since then. So I think we used it during a giveaway, maybe for Rock Around the 412 at 23. I'm thinking.
Wow.
So
that's pretty wild.
But yeah, so I don't have one, but I will. Okay, but there's like a trickle effect here that this could play into where I'm also impacted by this because I've already gotten from our great sponsor, Game Changers, I've already gotten the DK Metcalf shirt from them. If DK Metcalf now switches to number 14 because of George Pickens leaving, okay, now I'm upset about that. So, and I honestly, if I'm a betting man, I think he's going to. Like, I think that, 4 is a nice little placeholder for him. I don't know. I tweeted at him. Maybe he saw it. Let's keep the fans in mind here.
He saw it.
DK and because how many people probably got. We just did a giveaway for the draft. Like we got one jersey and one of the people wanted a DK Game Changer shirt. So there's 2 people right there.
That's true.
That have gotten some DK Metcalf number 4 merch. So a lot of people are going to be impacted by that if DK Metcalf does switch to 14. Hopefully, at least I'm not saying for myself. I understand Game Changers, whatever. I'll buy a new shirt. But for people that got like legit jerseys, hopefully there's like an exchange they can do.
Yeah, that's true. For jerseys, it's a little different. But I was going to say for the Game Changers, at least, to play a little devil's advocate and see the other side of it, that just gives people the opportunity to use code AT412 again. So I just think that's a great promo if he switches back to 14.
Yeah, which, by the way, I mean, like business is booming. It's not our business, but their business is booming. The only we have done more codes within the last 2 months than like we were in football season. So I don't know. I don't want to just assume, but like it all kind of centers around the DK trade and when that shirt was put up on the site. So a large part of me believes that a lot of people are tapping in using that AT412 code to get themselves that DK Metcalf shirt. So, I don't want to pander too much to DK, but I'm just saying, I think a lot of people got number 4 already in some form or fashion. So, but we're not here to talk about DK Metcalf. He is a Pittsburgh Steeler still. George Pickens is not. Late Tuesday night, this really started to trickle down. Bark, Ricky is back on the web and was putting out on Twitter about the Steelers making a move. And I don't think a lot of people realize at first, like, if you click on like what the alternate description thing of, it's George Costanza, but George getting up and leaving. So like George leaving was, but basically what he was saying within that, he gets pretty creative with the cryptic stuff that he puts out there. Because I think a lot of people are like, oh, okay, Aaron Rodgers is finally happening or whatever. But very clearly that's what it was alluding to. And then like in the wee hours of the night, I think it's like, I don't know, 6 a.m. here, maybe like 3, 4 a.m, depending on what part of the country you're in. Schefter puts out about the deal going through. So the Steelers get a 2026 third and a 2026 fifth for George Pickens and a 2027 was the 5th, 6th swap. So 2027 5th along with the 2026 third for a 2027 6th in George Pickens. This is honestly like the value that I thought they were going to get. I think it's the value that they would have needed to get to trade him during the draft. There was nothing better than a 4th on the table during the draft. So I don't have a problem with the trade. I actually like I said, I think that good value. I think this was a player that they had decided, much like my own opinion, that they did not want to do business with moving forward. I think it's pretty good tell, even though people wanted to try to talk themselves into having both of them. I think it's a pretty good tell about how they feel about a player when they decide to go outside of the building, acquire a receiver, and then pay that guy. So that I thought the writing was on the wall. I had to kind of eat crap for a little bit within my mentions with people telling me that they were going to play together. And once we got past the draft, there was a part of me that was like, okay, maybe this goes into the summer and then he makes things ugly. And then we'll see if the Steelers decide to still, hold firm on not wanting to move him. He told reporters in Dallas today that he did not at any point request a trade. That's different from what I had heard. I'm not like, I hear something.
Call him a liar, Smitty. Say it with your chest.
I don't know because I'm not saying that I've gotten bad information before. So I'm just saying I had heard that the week following the draft he had requested a trade, and I started to think, man, well, that's pretty convenient that his team waited until after the draft to request a trade, but they were already shopping it beforehand. So I don't know. Who knows? My problem within this whole process was not drafting a receiver during the draft, and we talked about this last week. Where the one pick that I wasn't a fan of was the Jack Sawyer selection because they still had a Umanor on the board at that point. Man, it hurts me to even say the name because they should. And also, I mean, there's some other receivers like Torrey Horton was there that they could have taken out of Colorado. Like there were some other players that they could have taken at that point that I feel like would have made a lot of sense. And instead taking Jack Sawyer, so my problem isn't with the trade, it's with the process. I think they need to have something else in place in order for this move to make sense because now you're back in the same spot where you were 14 months ago and really throughout all of last year where you got one receiver at the top, this one now much more highly compensated, and basically the rest of the roster was like, I like Calvin Austin. He took a massive step last year. Roman Wilson's a lottery ticket. Robert Woods is 33 years old. We got Ben Stronach and Scotty Miller back. Like something's got to give within this receiver room. Is there still an addition to come potentially? But like that's what we were saying all last year. Like we went through the entire offseason last year, just assuming that another move was going to be made just for one to not be made. So as it stands right now, it looks very similar, but at least right now there's still the opportunity to add somebody, whether it's via free agency or another trade.
Yeah, this George Pickens trade has left me a little quandered about how I feel about it because whenever I think about just the trade itself and look at the player himself, I am pretty happy about it. I thought that the value was good that they got back in return, especially considering some of the stuff that, whether true or not, people have heard things about what front offices or alleged GMs or anybody in front offices have said about George Pickens joining their locker room. And
did you see the thing today from The Athletic?
No, well, maybe. I don't know.
So the Steelers were shopping him during the draft, meaning like they were also calling teams. The Athletic put out that their like front office people were laughing at the idea.
Oh yeah, okay, I did see that.
Yeah,
and from that standpoint, like getting the value that they did from the Cowboys, all for it. I think that was a decent trade. But then when you look at the situation the Steelers are left in again, where it pretty much is mirroring last offseason in the same footing right now. Like, the only difference is you have a wide receiver one that's under a longer term contract. And again, last year you weren't trying to sign George Pickens to that long-term contract. But as far as the depth chart goes, you're looking like the exact same. You lost one of your most talented receivers to this trade. And I just don't see, at least on the roster right now, where they're going to make up for that. And even if they bring in somebody like, I know a lot of people are throwing out like Gabe Davis because he was released, or Alan Lazard because the connection to Rodgers and that whole ensemble still going on. I understand that there's options out there for the Steelers to make, but I just don't think that there's going to be anything that's going to replace what you get out of the talent of George Pickens. Now, they may get a bonus or a plus in the mental side of things and in the locker room side of things when it comes to these players, because I don't know if you saw what Aditi Kikabala was talking about on The Fan this morning.
Literally, I was listening to a podcast, Steelers Sanctuary, that I've appeared on a couple times, and they were mentioning the same thing I think you're about to.
Dude, I mean, she was just basically going in on George Pickens, saying that he is essentially, and I'm talking verbatim and using my own words, but basically the biggest baby that she's ever seen on the sideline, needing everybody's attention, whether it be good or bad, whether it's in support of him whenever he's doing something good, or if he's frustrated, he needs the attention of all his teammates. She was like basically flabbergasted this morning, talking about how George Pickens, this is such a win for the Steelers because they got him off of their team. And so while the talent perspective, you're probably not going to be able to replace just the individual raw talent as a receiver. Maybe you do end up getting a healthier locker room and a healthier wide receiver room out of this. If you do end up bringing in either someone like Gabe Davis or Alan Lazard or whoever else they could look at to bring in, it's limited, but you might have a wide receiver room that at least operates healthier from a mentality standpoint. Obviously, the skill set not as high as what you would have had with George Pickens, but maybe it's just a healthier locker room environment overall, and that could be a win for the Steelers just in and of itself, because for the past decade, when have we not had a locker room issue for the Steelers? I feel like it's just been ongoing, and it varies from who it is year to year. And then recently it's been George Pickens. He's gone. So I'm sure in 2025, someone else will turn into a head case. But as of right now, there's nothing that on paper looks like is going to be a problem, at least from a locker room standpoint for the Steelers.
That's a good point. I think with him going to Dallas, CeeDee Lamb and him from a talent perspective, that's, one of the top duos, in my opinion, in the league. But yeah, that obviously comes with some baggage that the Steelers are getting rid of. And right now it's hard to see who that guy would be within the locker room. Like, I think they generally just have a good group of guys, and that's maybe that's where they win. Maybe the camaraderie, maybe that's going to be on the plus side of things here for them. Maybe that is the separator. Maybe that is the game changer. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412, and I just want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our folks at Game Changers. Their logo on the screen right now, right above my microphone. Over 2,000 different designs in their catalog. Luxury heavyweight material. I'm wearing one of their shirts right now. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Head over to gamechanger.la or pick6.la to pick up some shirts. And guess what? Use code AT412. Save yourself $10 on your order every single time. Again, gamechanger.la or pick6.la. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Check them out. Now, that being said, you got to be able to play. And I don't think that this wide receiver group is enough right now. If if the ball was rolled out there today, I don't think that you're much improved from where you are where you were last season. So I still think there needs to be an addition there. Who that might be, you mentioned some of the names that I think make sense. Gabe Davis, I think, is a better fit than he is player. What I mean by that is, I think he's very limited in terms of the route tree that he runs. The hands are inconsistent, but he's good down the field. He plays on the outside. He's a really good blocker. That's what the Steelers need, sans George Pickens. Lazard, to me, I think that's a conversation just because of Aaron, right? That's probably not a guy that we're talking about if it wasn't for the assumed addition of Aaron Rodgers to the quarterback room and him being the guy there. It's kind of the same thing to me, although I'd be intrigued by the Packers guys regardless of who was playing quarterback, but obviously Aaron spoke so highly of Romeo Doubs when he played with him as a young player. So he could certainly make sense. I put out there today, in addition to, Pony was the one that put out about the mask and specifically about Dobbs. I was told earlier this week that they basically just made a general call to Green Bay and said, hey, who's available? So I know that they certainly asked about Dontavian Wicks too. Obviously, Christian Watson's probably not going to play until October, November, probably somewhere within that range. So who even knows? Jaden Reed's in that room right now. They added two guys. I don't know how that room's going to shake out. Alan mentioned, what if they just list Savion Williams as a running back? Christian Watson's going to go on IR, obviously. Then they necessarily don't need to move somebody. You probably got just say, or unless it's Mecole Hardman or Bo Melton. But at that point, that's not somebody that that's not the type of name we're looking for in terms of an upgrade anyway. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where that addition comes from. Amari Cooper's still out there. Keenan Allen's still out there, but those guys, slots, I would look at them at this point. And I'm not saying Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson are the guys that should necessarily be blocking somebody, but Calvin Austin coming off the year that he had last year where I thought he took a leap. Roman Wilson, I think that you've invested enough in where you'd want to get a look. To me, it needs to be a guy that can play on the outside. I don't know where that's coming from at this point, but we'll see if there's an addition there. Back to the George thing. I don't want to necessarily, I don't want to keep, talking down about this, but I just feel like the information needs to be put out there because I feel like that's what gets lost in all of this. Like I'm never going to tell somebody how to be a fan. If they want to be a fan of the player over the team, whatever, that's your prerogative. I just have a hard time believing if a lot of the stuff that was going on was public information with George, that they would take his side and still be supportive of him through all of this. I mean, I feel like there's a good amount of stuff that is public. Like, I don't get how fans did not make, in my opinion, enough of a deal about him showing up late to the game on Christmas Day, where he was coming back from an injury. That's been put out there. That was known. And I saw fans downplaying it, saying it wasn't a big deal. Are you kidding? Like, that is, you cannot, if it was a lot of other players on that roster, they're not on the team anymore, let alone finish out the season and be given the opportunity to potentially come back. Obviously, they decided to move on. Like, what are we doing here? They gave him the opportunity going into last season, deciding to trade away Deontay Johnson instead of him because they knew that those two couldn't be together, hired a known like hard-ass coach in Zach Azzani to, try to develop that aspect of his game, not necessarily the skill perspective, but like be a hard coach on George to get him to take that next leap. Like, put everything in front of him to say, hey, if you want to be that number one guy, if you want that big payday, we're going to put it on your plate. Let's see how you respond. How did he respond? Look at what happened against the Cowboys. Look at what happened against the Browns. Look at what happened against the Chiefs. And then they go out and get a guy that was not a homegrown guy. They go outside of their building to bring him in and pay him instead to ship you out. You got your answer right there in terms of how they felt about George Pickens. I don't care what Peter Schrager's going on talk shows talking about, oh, they liked him in Pittsburgh. They just, knew they weren't. Are you kidding me? If they liked him, they would have paid him and not traded for DK Metcalf. What are we doing here? So I don't know. I just have a hard time wrapping my head around the way that a lot of this has been discussed with George, and it's bothered me. Obviously, I got a platform in here to talk about it. It's over. It's done with George no longer on the team. I don't mean to continue to bash him. I hope that he goes on and has success. But the stuff that he did in Pittsburgh, from a professional standpoint, was unacceptable, and a lot of people just brushed it under the rug.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said. You mentioned earlier that you mentioned that 2023 is whenever you actually were out on George Pickens, as opposed to a lot of people being out on him sometime in 2024. For me,
the game against the Colts when he didn't block for Jalen Warren and then admitted that he didn't want to get hurt. That was it. That's
a red flag for sure. The game for me that was like definitely the nail in the coffin where I was out on him, and we talked about it at length, I believe, the week after this game, was you mentioned the Cowboys game. Seeing what he did, the lack of effort, basically jogging on some routes. Like it's one thing if a receiver is going to jog and not give a ton of effort as a run play, especially if it's like to the opposite side of the field, nowhere near him. That's its own thing. But whenever you're actually in a passing down and you're running routes and you're still not giving effort, that to me is just unacceptable. It was back then, and we went at length about how we were both out on George Pickens definitely after that, and that he should not be on this team moving forward. They should try to move on from him. Ultimately, the Steelers sided with you and I and several other people in the city of Pittsburgh. If there's anything that I would say, like, oh, I would defend George in this, it's not anything that has to do with getting rid of him. It's just that he is their best receiver. So, like, I understand why people want to keep that. I understand why people want to keep the talent.
It's why they had to put up with him last year. There was no, they made him too important to be able to do anything about.
Absolutely. And that's why that's the only defense I see of people saying, like, trying to brush things over. It's just the talent of the receiver. But eventually it comes to a breaking point. And like you said, they bring in DK Metcalf, a guy that is not homegrown, out of the organization, and give him that extension. That is something that should have been the writing on a wall for a lot of people. I didn't think that we'd get to the season. I probably wasn't as adamant as you about it with the George Pickens getting traded. I thought if he made it through the draft, there was a chance that they could make it to the season and they play together, just because I didn't really know necessarily what the partnership would look like for a trade partner, or like what return would look like, and if it was going to be worth it for the Steelers at that point. And maybe it's just be worth it to suck it up for another season and try to get as much talent as you can out of him. But ultimately, I just think it's a better thing that he's not on the roster. And I think that there's just something that I've talked about that I wanted to ask you. Has the Steelers narrative of being a team that can take the problem childs of football, whether that be someone that is looked down on in a draft or starts to slide in the draft because of, well, George Pickens is one of them. Actually, he was a first-round talent. They got taken in the second round. Have the Steelers narrative of being this team that can take in these kind of players that have some off-the-field issues, locker room issues, has that changed a little bit in your mind? Because to me, this is now multiple players in a row that the Steelers just have not been able to turn around, have not been able to work out, and they end up shipping them off. And I feel like the Steelers at some point, without us knowing, have changed from being the safe haven for that type of player to a team that they can't even fix anymore. And I'm not saying that anybody else can, but I don't think the Steelers are going to be that team either.
I don't think they want to be. I feel like there's been a shift, probably from like lessons learned, where I think you're going to see them start targeting different type of people, not just players. I think the person that they're bringing in is going to be a lot more important. I said that when they hired Artie Smith and Zach Azzani. I thought that those were very intentional for the type of wide receiver. I mean, I should specifically that position at least. I think that they're going to start targeting different players. Like I see a lot of people throwing out like, hey, they should just go sign Isaiah Bond. Like, what do we do? Like, what was the point of what we just did if you're bringing in an Isaiah Bond? And I don't know Isaiah Bond. Like, but I'm just saying based off what we have heard about him, there's a reason he didn't get drafted. Yeah. But anyway, so I think that's my answer to that. What I will say in terms of having those problem childs on the roster, they were still productive, like while here, and then we've seen them go elsewhere and not be. So at the very least, like able to corral them as much as possible to still get them to produce on the football field to a higher degree than other people have. What's that worth? I don't know, but we'll see what George Pickens goes and does in Dallas. I mean, I like the potential of it for sure. Like you think about CeeDee Lamb's the clear-cut number one. Like George is a super talented dude, but CeeDee's top 3 in the league. I mean, so I think that he's definitely the clear-cut number one, despite who the number 2 is. A lot of attention is obviously going to be drawn there. George, with the last full season Dak played, was an MVP candidate. Arguably could have won it over Lamar Jackson. So I don't know. I think that could be very fruitful if his head's on straight. But the only point of that was we've seen how this has gone for when the Steelers decide to move on from a player. It's typically at the right time for them and the wrong time for everybody else. We'll see if George falls in line with that or if he's able to buck the trend.
Yeah, maybe you can agree or disagree with this. Whenever I thought about the connection of Dak to George potential with CD also being on the field, I immediately thought of the rookie year and especially the second year of Juju whenever AB was still around and being productive in Pittsburgh, like maybe just a beneficiary just from having another guy of that caliber on the field.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm curious to see what their relationship is going to be like. Like they seem pretty pumped right now. Once you get out there and play games and you realize, oh wait, there is only one football. We'll see if that still is the case. But I thought Jordan Lewis's tweet was pretty funny too. That was like one of the first ones I saw when I opened up Twitter. Was I know he obviously was the one from the Cowboys that got into the little scrap with George at the end of the game last year. He signed with the Jaguars in free agency this offseason. He quoted Adam Schefter's tweet about the trade and said, "I knew God brought me to Jacksonville for a reason." So did not want to be teammates with George Pickens. And speaking of teammates and George Pickens, again, this isn't supposed to necessarily just be a huge George Pickens bash session, but when you see players move on from an organization, whether it be in free agency or trade, I feel like you typically see, teammates giving them well wishes in their next venture, wherever it might be. I mean, if people were paying attention, what was it? Calvin Austin and Nick Herbig. I think those were the only two that said Georgia teammates, Broderick Jones, Darnell Washington. Where were they at? I mean, I don't know how much more clear it needs to be that this guy was just not a welcomed presence on this roster anymore. I think that they are very happy with doing away with the person, even if it means not having the player.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's ultimately what this comes down to. And that's why I was going back to what I was talking about earlier, that it could just be a win having a healthier locker room environment for the Steelers, even if the skill set is not going to be as good. You might, with the camaraderie that you could get from not having Pickens in the locker room, it could be a plus for the offense, coincidentally enough, which I know sounds odd in and of itself, saying that you're going to be better offensively without George Pickens. But I could see a world where just basically coming together as a team and being more unified makes this team better offensively, even though you took away arguably your most skilled player.
Yeah. I don't know what the plan is. Again, I think this is a very different conversation if you just swap out that Jack Sawyer pick for Ayubanor in the 4th round. Like, I feel much better about, and I understand, like, rookie receiver, we just saw what happened with Roman Wilson last year. You know, even despite the injury, like, he was pretty far behind going into training camp and stuff like that. But I would have felt way better about the state of this wide receiver room, even with a 4th round rookie in Alec Ayubanor. Just because, like, first off, I don't feel like he was a 4th round talent. I thought he could have gone in round 2 and not batted an eye. Super good fit for what the Steelers want to do. I mentioned, like, Gabe Davis. I feel like he's kind of like a supercharged version of that. So I don't know. We'll see. Also with Gabe Davis, did we mention this when we talked about him? He was actually released with an injury designation, which isn't good news. So maybe that knee injury still bothering him from last year, which hampered him. If that's the case, I don't know how much interest the Steelers are going to have, but if he's not even able to be like who he can be physically, that takes away the part I was talking about where he's going to be able to be a deep field stretcher. Then I don't know that my interest level is still there.
Yeah, he's really the only one of the ones that I would be interested in if they're healthy, being healthy.
And also, do people think he's like way older than he actually? Like, he's 26. I saw people were talking about him like he's like 30 plus. Like,
no, everybody else that they could get is 30 plus.
Yeah,
it's everybody but him is 30 plus. And really everybody is Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, Alan Lazard. That's pretty much it, honestly. Like, there's not a ton of options unless you want to go. I'm pretty sure Gunnar Olszewski is a free agent. We can go get him again.
I saw people throwing out some pipe dreams, like a DJ Moore thing. Like, what are we doing?
Like trading for DJ Moore?
Yeah.
I
mean, like, right now, I think he has like
maybe they could get a different DJ. They could probably get DJ Chark, but
he's a free agent. Yeah.
That's another realistic option. I just don't think.
I mean, I keep going back to this guy. I'd love it after trading for a quarterback and paying him. I don't think that I think the Raiders want to try to be better this year, but Jacoby Myers has been my guy going back to last year, like, that I would love the Steelers to trade for. Now, he's a free agent at the end of the year. So, Jacoby, do not sign another contract in Vegas. Also, it seems like he's probably super old too, because he's on like he'll be on like his 3rd contract. I think he's only 20, like he'll be 29, or he is 29. Like, could sign another 2-3 year deal. So, but I don't know what they're gonna do. It's just, to me, no problem. This goes back to a lot of things that the Steelers have done recently, I feel like, where it's like, no problem with this move in a vacuum, but like, you include it into everything else, and it's like, what are we doing? Like, I can understand why people are questioning the process here of the trade, not necessarily because of the timeline. The timeline makes sense to me because they couldn't get a day 2 pick, which is what they needed to do to make the trade during the draft. So they waited until after, when Dallas got, they upped the price because they got more desperate. So no problem with the timeline part of it, but they had to have a pretty good feeling that they were going to move George. I would have thought at that point, you got to plan for that. Like, how do you not draft? I keep mentioning one name there. There were plenty of names and there were plenty of spots to take one, even if it would have been later, to say, like, at least, like, we got somebody that didn't draft a receiver at all. And then Rock Taylor is a UDFA, who's, I'm not going to lie, kind of intriguing, but, like, let's be honest. I think a lot of people are probably talking him up more than he should be, just because of the possibility that, like, oh, this guy might actually make the roster if they don't add somebody else.
Yeah. I think that this is probably stems from last year, and not as far as like the connection, but as far as the inability to prepare yourself for this type of situation. I mean, we kind of saw the writing on the wall all of last offseason when they were all their eggs that were into one basket, that being Brandon Ayuk. Didn't work out. Don't
Did not.
necessarily know how
Hey, there's
well
another
I
name.
love the plan and go.
Brand Ayuk. Mike Florio said they'd love to unload him onto the Steelers. Honestly, the 49ers, it would be stupid. Like the dead cap that they'd be eating to do it would be stupid. The money that they'd be eating, just dumb. For the acquiring team, not that bad. Paying a minimum this year because he's already was paid the third day of the lead year, which is past. So the 49ers have already kind of sunk their teeth into that one. Then he's due $27 million next year, which the Steelers would be on the hook for. But like, if he's the type of player that he was in 23, that's perfectly palatable. And then the following 2 years aren't guaranteed. So, like, an acquiring team should want to trade for Brandon Ayuk right now, in my opinion. I don't know why the 49ers would do it, though, because of the money they'd be eating.
Sure. One that kind of stings for considering looking at what the Steelers picked around where he went. Someone we talked about in the process a lot was Ricky White out of UNLV as maybe like a 5th, 6th, 7th round guy. He went to Seattle, picked 238 in the 7th round. I mean, not like we just said, we don't want to turn this into like crapping on George Pickens. I don't want to turn the last 2 episodes crapping on like Dante Kent, but like I would have rather had Ricky White.
They could have signed Dante Kent as a UDFA. Like, I mean, I almost look at if you switch the Sebastian Castro pick and Dante Kent, or Sebastian Castro signing Dante Kent pick, that's makes much more sense. Dante Kent should not have been drafted, but they spent the pick on it, so whatever. Castro, I think, has as good of a shot as a UDFA that was signed anywhere to make a roster. But
yeah,
neither here nor there. But yeah, 100% agree. Ricky White's a guy that can play on the outside. You know, would offer special teams value. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not shooting down what you said. I definitely would have been on board with that. I feel like with him, how much different is that even than like a Ben Skoranek? Like, to me, add a receiver at any point in the draft, and it makes more sense than what they did. But I really think like that 4th round spot is, or even, you know, as much as I think like YA Black, I don't know what receivers were taken within that range. That was their very next pick. I think you could have made a better case for a receiver there as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point too. We will question the YA Black pick in and of itself, regardless of the potential of taking a receiver. There just should have been more of a safety net for something that it seems like they knew was happening, but they just were not prepared for. Some picks immediately after the Steelers took YA Black at wide receiver. Seattle took Torrey Horton out of Colorado State. And then you actually have to go to the 6th round.
That's the name I just mentioned. Wait, so you're saying he went after?
Yeah, he went like
okay. So
7 picks after.
Either take Ayomanor instead of Sawyer, or take Horton instead of Black. Those were the 2 options right there in the draft.
Yeah, there it is.
I saw people making the case, you know, like, hey, don't take Harmon, take Matthew Golden, don't take Caleb Johnson, take a receiver there. I'll be honest, if you take, I don't know how many times I'm going to say the name Ayumanor during this podcast, but if you would have taken Harmon, Caleb Johnson, Ayumanor, I wouldn't have even have cared what I don't care if they made another pick. They would have, this class would have been a home run for me just based off those 3 picks, and that's without the benefit of a 2nd round pick.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point.
So I wouldn't have changed Harmon or Caleb Johnson, to be honest with you.
I wouldn't have either. If even with hindsight, I wouldn't have either. Before we wrap up, I wanted to get your thoughts. Seemingly a lot of people, and these are more so the people that are looking at the trade as a lack of talent in the wide receiver room, as opposed to getting George Pickens like the out of the locker room, the person, not the player. A lot of people are seemingly throwing 2025 out the window, saying that the season is going to be ruined now, and that you might as well just like go all the way out. if you were going to, just because they moved on from George Pickens. So what would you say to those people saying that they're punting on the season by trading away George Pickens? I saw even some people throwing out, well, why stop there? Just don't give TJ the contract and move on and strip it all the way down. To me, that seems a little bit drastic, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it.
George Pickens isn't that type of needle mover. That's my response to that. Like, he's a good player. He's a talented dude, but like, I mean, betting odds aren't everything. Vegas odds aren't everything, but how they feel about it, their win total stayed the exact same. Their odds stayed the exact same to make the playoffs. So that's how much of a needle mover Vegas feels like George Pickens is. And I don't think he changes things drastically either for the outlook of the team. If people had that thought regardless, I can understand that. Like, don't get me wrong. If you're thinking, let's trade TJ, let's trade Minkah Fitzpatrick, let's just start over, don't sign Aaron Rodgers, let's just look ahead. That's a perfectly fine thought to have, I think, in terms of if that's the path you want to move forward. This trade shouldn't have been why you changed your mind on anything, though. That's my point. I don't know why trading away George Pickens 1 year away from hitting free agency would change your mind about the outlook of this team. Especially when they're not going to replace the talent, but they have every opportunity still, with it being May 8th, the time of recording this, to get somebody else in that room who can, what's the thing from Moneyball? Replace him in the aggregate.
Yeah.
We'll see if the Steelers are able to do that. I understand the hesitancy to think that they will, because we've had a lot of the same conversations surrounding the receiver room for the last 14 months. So I understand that. And if they don't, that's going to be a complete failure, and we'll call them out on this podcast if they don't do something within that room. But no, I think that's ridiculous to me that anybody would change their mind for 2025 and beyond based off George Pickens being traded.
Yeah, to me, if you just look at the team right now, in and of itself, defense is fairly the same as last year. I mean, obviously, it's different, a little bit different personnel, but just
they're better.
You think they're better? Okay, fair.
I mean, Darius Slay, even though he's 34, upgrade on Dante Jackson, assuming that he's the same player that he was.
True. I actually forgot they got Slay. I'm going to be completely honest with you right now.
Yeah. Assuming health, I think Juan Thornhill allows them to do a little bit more in terms of 3 safety looks, which they've been wanting to do. And Larry Ogunjobi was awful. And we spent a first round pick on Derek Harmon. So like, I think that they're going to be better. The one loss to me is I'm curious to see the rundown linebacker situation. Is Malik Harrison going to be able to replicate the Landon Roberts? From a pass down perspective, I would like to think second year Patrick Queen and second year Patrick Queen in the system, and second year in general Peyton Wilson. I have high hopes for what Peyton Wilson's going to look like this year. Like, think the game's going to slow down a little bit more for him. So yeah, I think there's every opportunity for them to be better on the defensive side of the ball for sure.
So if you look at the team just in the whole, defensively, arguably better than last year. Wide receiver room, arguably pretty much the same. So you subtracted George Pickens, added in DK Metcalf. You still have a number 1 wide receiver and a bunch of who knows what behind him. Offensive line, I would presume probably going to be better. You get hopefully a full year out of Troy Fautanu. Year 2 of Mason McCormick, Zach Frazier. So I would think that you'd like to see a step forward in the offensive line. Running back room, I think, could be better with the addition of Caleb Johnson and seeing what you get from Kenneth Gainwell at RB3. So really the question to me of what the actual needle mover is still the quarterback position. Is Aaron actually coming? Are we going to see Mason Rudolph going to be the starting quarterback, or does Will Howard miraculously become the starting quarterback at some point this season? That's, to me, is the actual needle mover of the win total. So that's why Vegas, to me, got it right, where George, whether he's here or not, it's always the quarterback. It always comes down to the quarterback. Every other team reacts the same every single way, but the Steelers, for the past several years, how they play and how well they do always revolves around their quarterback. So I understand why the quarterback situation being what it is with Pittsburgh, why the needle did not change if George left. But if Aaron comes into the room and Vegas ups their win total by half a game or a game, I can understand that too, being more of a needle mover than losing your number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah. There's some projection, obviously, that goes into that too. Like, I think that Vegas is assuming that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the starting quarterback for this team when they put that out there. So if that comes to fruition, does he bring one of his guys, whether it's Alan Lazard or they make a move for one of those Packers guys. I don't know. And honestly, I was kind of expecting Gabe Davis to just go back to Buffalo. They still need an outside guy, and obviously the familiarity there. But I don't know how much that knee's going to change things. So I'm not sure. I'll put my prediction is this is such a vague statement because I'm not going to put a name to it. I think they're going to add somebody.
Wow. What a risk you're taking.
Yeah. I think they're going to. Okay. I'll take it a step further. I don't think they're going to trade for anybody. I think it's just to be a free agent.
Okay. I'll take it a step further. I'll say it will be Allen Lazard. When Aaron does.
So they're going to have to trade for him.
Yeah. I think they get one of Aaron's guys.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. You're putting a name on it. I'm not putting a name on it, but I'll go with the free agency route so they don't have to dip into that capital. Right now, on schedule to have 12 draft picks in 2026.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah.
Probably going to end up only using like 8 or 9 of them when we trade.
Well, here's the other part. Before we get out of here, actually, we'll play this ad and then one more thing to bring up. But Keats Barbershop. Smitty from around the 412 here. And while I may not have much hair, the hair that I do have will not be cut by anybody besides Keat at Keats Barbershop. My friend Christian Circle, been with us since day one. Keats Barbershop, located 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app, The Cut. Book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do walk-in with Tony or Ashley. But again, Keats Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Go check them out. Old school vibe in there. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend them enough. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Maybe I'll see you there. And if you have a haircut appointment scheduled for Saturday, I will see you there. I don't know. I'm debating, man. I'm thinking about taking it off. Summer's coming up. Yeah.
Here, let me show you something.
Oh, no. When you say all of it, I'm talking about just like the mullet, the long hair. Not going bald.
What? No. I mean the mullet.
Yeah.
Like taking that short.
Yeah.
Well, for the YouTube audience.
Oh, wow. I didn't even notice.
Mine is gone. Although, yeah, I mean, it was hard to tell that I had a mullet regardless, especially with like the headphones on and everything. But it's gone now. I got it cut last Saturday.
Wow.
I'm not gonna lie, it was a little sad.
Yeah. I'm sure I'll be sad on Saturday if I decide to go through with it, but I just know I'm gonna hate it as we get into the warmer months here. So last thing that I wanted to bring up, because we were talking about the comp picks and stuff like that. There's been a lot of conversation surrounding that, and I understand the idea. Like, if they're stockpiling comp picks, the natural thought process is those are going to be the picks used to move up. But you think about it, like, how much are they going to even be able to get up? We don't know where they're going to be picking, but like, say they're picking 20 or something like that, about where they have been. I don't know, like, what are 3rd, 4th round picks plus going to do for you in terms of getting up? Like, realistically, I think it's still going to take using that 2027 first. But the idea is it's more palatable because you have all those picks in 2026 to surround that quarterback that you're moving up for with a better roster. So when you don't have the 1st round pick the following year, you're not taking as much of a hit. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, that's kind of the way that I'm looking at it. It's an unconventional thought compared to what's being put out there, but I'm just thinking like I don't know how much, like, you're not moving from 20 to 10 with 2 3rd round picks, in my opinion, especially in a class where teams are trying to get up for quarterbacks.
Well, if I've learned anything about the NFL draft, it's that you can move 3 second-round picks for number 6 overall. So I don't really see an issue here.
Yeah, that's true.
But I do think that if you are indeed moving up for a quarterback, and I mean, we've got this whole new draft cycle and college football season still to even go through. So who knows what name or how far they're actually going to have to go up to get the quarterback that they want. But I think that you see a quarterback tax. Everybody knows that. And so when you're moving into what could potentially be in the top 10, yeah, I imagine you're definitely giving up next year's first as well. Well, next year being 2027, talking about the 2026 draft. And then maybe more on top of that from there. But the fact that you are getting that capital to really, like, they could really overhaul a lot of their team with how many draft picks. I don't know the last time the Steelers have had this many draft picks in a single draft.
Five picks in the first 2 days right now.
Yeah. Like you can get a lot of impact players with that.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see if it comes to fruition. We'll see how that shakes out and how they decide to use their draft picks. But I think that's all we got. Let us know in the comments your thoughts on this whole George Pickens situation. I know we spent a lot of time talking about that. And again, I've been out on him as a Steeler for quite some time, but I never want to write off somebody entirely. So hope he goes to Dallas and does his thing. The talent level is certainly there for him to put it all together. So hope the best for George moving forward. And we'll see how it plays out for him. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you were here on YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else. Although, hey, if you're listening and want to come over to YouTube and do that same stuff I just said, or vice versa on YouTube, go over to those listening platforms. Feel free to do so, please. Regardless of where you're watching or listening, check out the description where we got all of our sponsors stuff in there, including right above Tyler right now, Marcelo Electric, our friend Brandon Marcelo's small business. We got the link down below to his Facebook page, phone numbers there, emails there. You can hit him up. Also, all of his work is there. Yeah, so be sure to do that along with Game Changers, gamechanger.la, pick6.la. Save yourself $10 using code AT412 at checkout. I actually just bought a Caleb Johnson shirt the other day. Not in Steelers stuff yet, but like basically is, because I was basically Steelers colors. Different number, rocking number 20 now and not number 2. But awesome shirt. Also, yeah, maybe at this point, let's wait on the DK. You know, we'll see. They might have to update that one. So wait around on that one potentially, but a bunch of other Steelers designs are on the site as well. So be sure to check them out over there. And then again, Keeks Barbershop, download the app, The Cut, and book an appointment with him. And then follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. Is anybody still using that Blue Sky thing or whatever?
Never even downloaded it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We never made one for this. I made a personal one and I have it still on my phone, but we never made one over here. So
we had a Threads longer than we had a Blue Sky.
Wow. Yeah. Had it in the banner for a while too, but I had to finally take it out of there. But anyways, yeah, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. If you are a Pirates fan, be sure to check out that episode for the week. We're going to dive into another big headline within 48 hours. There's a lot of things that happen in the world of Pittsburgh sports. We're going to dive into that. So go check that out if you haven't yet. But until then, for Smitty, for Tyler, this has been the Around the 412 Steelers show. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.